All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? How's it going? I am Else. I am going over the Warden changes for the Scalebreaker DLC. I've gone through all the classes so far. If you want to check out your favorite class, please go back and check out my channel. I go through them kind of in depth, and then I discuss some of the changes on the PTS just from my experience with them. This one will be covering the Warden changes and what to kind of expect for the Scalebreaker DLC. So, with that being said, guys, let's dive into it. First changes, Animal Companions, Advanced Species, which is one of the passives. Reduce the damage increase per Animal Companion ability slotted to 2% from 3%, so a small damage decrease for Wardens. Probably not really going to be noticeable, to be honest. It's not, it's 1% per Animal Companion, so it's next to nothing. Feral Guardian, fix an issue where the Grizzly's attacks could become desynced or stuck after using Crushing Swipe. This applies to all versions of the Grizzly. This will result in higher damage per second for the Grizzly since it will be able to properly perform its next action more frequently. The bear is fantastic. The bear is honestly in a duel, the bear is probably like the best ultimate in the game. It hits really hard. It's super cheap. There's all sorts of good things about the Feral Guardian. However, when you're in open world PvP, it just kind of does its own thing a little bit too much, and so it gets kind of unnoticed in those situations, which is too bad. But I do like, this being a buff to an already powerful ultimate is going to make Wardens even more substantial in PvE and in duels, in my opinion. So, yeah, this is a pretty. If they're actually hitting more consistently, they hit pretty damn hard. So this will be an interesting change next patch. Swarm, increase the cost of this ability and morphs to 2,700 from 2,430, and increase the damage per tick by approximately 17%. So small buff to damage over time. Growing Swarm, this ability can now infect any nearby enemy from patient 0 rather than only 6 enemies. They've reduced in general, for Scalebreaker, they started doing this to a bunch of skills. So like Meteor used to give you ultimate based on how many people you hit, up to 6 people. Growing Swarm is now one of those things where they start removing the cap. And so if people are stacked up, you're going to hit everybody. And so I like these changes quite a bit. It helps small scale PvP. Sometimes, a 24-man really just wants to run you down, and it helps to at least do a little bit of damage to some of them before you die. So I appreciate this. Green Balance, Nature's Grass. Decrease the heal over time for this ability in Smorphs by approximately 24%, so that's a pretty big nerf to Nature's Grasp. Bursting Vines, increase the burst heal by approximately 13%. Winter's Embrace, Arctic Wind, increase the heal over time from this ability in Smorphs by approximately 66%. That's a huge buff to Arctic Wind. It will now start scaling the heal at 5% of your max health per tick rather than 3%. Icy Escape, fix an issue where the synergy was not being properly recognized by conditional bonuses, such as when activating synergy. And then Impaling Shards, increase the cost of this ability in Smorphs to 45.36 from 35.10, and increase the damage per tick by approximately 9%. So, those are the initial Warden changes. However, the biggest change, guys, from 5.1.0 is actually in the Destruction staff skill line, which is Destructive Touch and Destructive Reach. These went through some huge reworks. I actually talked about this a little bit in its own video. I did not cover the Shock staff, so I will cover it in this video for you guys that wanted to see it, and I will label that correctly in the video for you that wants to see it. But they reduced the base cost, so it's going to be a lot cheaper. Reduced the initial hit damage by a decent amount, but increased the dot by a lot. So once again, this is single target dot. Single target's dots got buffed quite a bit. And for the base ability, they reduced the range from 17 to 15, which will basically be next to nothing. However, the two changes are Destructive Reach. This morph retains a unique functionality for each elemental staff type you choose, but no longer deals damage over time. Flame Clench knocks the target back and stuns them for the duration. Frost Clench immobilizes, and Shock converts the attack into an AoE explosion and deals our AoE damage standard. So, Wardens often used the Master's Shock Staff because not only was it a knockdown, but it also buffed their bugs. And so Wardens have a lot of AoE, so it makes sense to use Lightning Staff. Now, using a Shock Staff, you will not get the CC. And so I'm going to show this on the PTS to show what it does now. Destructive Reach, it increases the range to 28 meters and reduces the cost to 24.30 at rank 4. So that's probably the biggest change, is Destructive Reach. Well, this is probably Clench. This is the one one of the mistakes that they made. They both talked about these. Clench is the one that no longer does the CC. So those are the changes for 5.1.0. 5.1.2, they did come in and say Arctic Wind updated the healing from this ability and its morphs to happen faster and be focused more on the initial heal rather than the heal over time. Initial heal now scales off 25% of your max health up from 15%, while the heal over time scales off 3% of your max health down from 5%. Heal over time now happens over 5 seconds rather than 10. So a lot of changes to Arctic Wind. And I have to really just go in there and look at it. I've never ran this skill, so those of you guys that have, you can tell me if it's a nerf or a buff. Healing Seed, Budding Seeds. This morph now also induces a heal over time while the area of effect grows. If the ability is consumed early, this heal over time is also consumed. All right, so we'll look at Budding Seeds as well. So those are the changes. Now we're going to go on the PTS, guys. We're going to look at our handy-dandy Warden here, and we're going to, just check it out. So for those of you guys that want to know what I'm wearing, I got the Master's Lightning Staff, I got the Black Rose Staff, 2-piece Blood Spawn, Buffer the Swift, 3 Willpower. This isn't a real build, obviously, like I just threw stuff together, but it kind of gives you an idea for like what kind of damage I have. So if we look at the Shock Clench, devastate an enemy with a volatile charge from your staff, dealing 9,000 shock damage to all enemies near the initial target. So it still does pretty good burst damage. Obviously, guys, like I don't have, this isn't fully buffed. I think it goes up to like 9,600. And if we have an enchant on our back bar, it'll jump up to about 10k shock damage. So as far as the spammable goes, it still satisfies, in my opinion. I mean, when you consider the cost, it's 1,700, and it does pretty good damage. So it's still, I think it's still fine for a spammable, especially with a Masters or like a, Master Staff. However, the CC is going to be a little bit, it's non-existent. So you're going to have to find another way to CC. And that's kind of the problem in general with Wardens is they do have a CC, but, their CC is just not very good. And so it's going to come down to, do you want a CC or do you want to go a bunch of different routes? So if we look at Arctic Wind, we can go in there and change it. Envelope yourself in Winter Winds. Instantly healing for 55, 17 health, and additional 660 health every second for 5 seconds. Wind sweep out in search of nearby eye. So this isn't bad. Arctic Blast. So Arctic Blast can stun your target. So we will equip this morph, and then looks like Shock Clench still does more damage than Screaming Cliff Racer, and it's cheaper. So we will try this out. So we have some mats here. We are going to just see what Shock Clench does. And so when we aggro them, you see they all take the shock damage. And so they all take the AoE burst. And so honestly, guys, it's not bad. It's definitely intriguing, especially because, the way I have my bar set up right now, guys, I'm running Entropy, and I have Soul Splitting Trap, and I have Fetcher Infection. And so you have all these dots, and now you have an AoE spammable. And it's going to become one of those things where it's like, with all these AoEs, do we necessarily need a CC? So that's going to be the change as far as Wardens go. If we use a spammable, as you guys can see, it's a heal, and then it also stuns. And so you have to have somebody here, obviously, in order to stun it. I wonder if I can... So yeah, so I guess Arctic Wind will be the way to go if you guys wanted to invest in your stamina recovery in order to... your stamina recovery in order to use the protection buff. I think that's another route you could go. But I kind of like the shot. Like, I'm not saying it's, losing the stun is bad, but like when you're fighting outnumbered and you use your bugs and you use a shock staff, like that's just going to be a lot of AoE pressure. And this is not even counting going into the ultimate. So, We use our growing swarm. We use our growing swarm, and then we use our soul splitting trap, which do pretty good damage over time. And yeah, we're just going to actually hit decently hard. So that's the changes, guys. Obviously, like, I'm not running a super high damage spec, so like I got buff for the Swift and Blood Spot on. But yeah, really interesting changes. Of course, like, I don't think the shock changes are bad. It's just for a Warden specifically, it's tough to lose the CC, obviously. And so Wardens have been a little bit annoyed by this. Arctic Blast is actually pretty expensive for the cost, especially for a stun. But, I mean, you do get a small heal, and then you get a small heal over time, I guess. So, I mean, it's not terrible, but part of me is just like, why would I run? I mean, I would have to test it. I don't know for sure. But, you know, why even potentially run a CC? You know, we'll just up our damage, and then we will run all these damage over time effects and just dot them down, and we will do a bunch of shock pressure and just hopefully kill people through the amount of damage that we're dishing out. So I don't know for sure, guys. Obviously, like, I don't play a bunch of Mag Warden. I'm just trying to provide alternatives for you guys. I'm going to look at both. Like I said, this is going to be the first build I look at when Scalebreaker drops, is how to maximize, you know, what we can do with the Warden. And so I'm going to test, you know, no CC and a CC. Hell, I'm even thinking about upgrading my, you know, perhaps running Amber Plasm just so I can utilize this Fighters Guild skill, Circle of Protection. I will try Arctic Wind, and we'll just see which one we end up falling on. But yeah, those are the changes for the Warden, guys. Stam Warden remains relatively unchanged. Permafrost got no nerf, which is still surprising to me. You know, I don't like calling for nerfs for a class, guys. I really, that's not something that I want to do. But when you look at the grand scheme of things and you see what Permafrost does, where it's a stun, it's major protection, and it does good damage, and it's a snare. You know, Incap got nerfed for similar reasons because of all of the buffs that it did. And although it is expensive, it's 200 ultimate, that cost is extremely mitigated by the fact that you have Shimmering Shield, which provides a bunch of ulti gen as well as makes you extremely tanky. So I'm not saying that it should be nerfed. I'm just saying that Permafrost has been one of the strongest ultimates in the game. And when Incap got changed, I was surprised that Permafrost wasn't changed. And this ultimate has taken a backseat to, you know, obviously what the Necro has. Like, the Pestilent Colossus and the Bone Goliath are like way more powerful than Permafrost. And so people are like, well, why touch Permafrost when we need to address these first? At the end of the day, guys, like, when I talk about adjusting Permafrost, I don't mean nerf Wardens. Like, they could use buffs in other ways, obviously. Like, they could use a better spammable, because I honestly think Screaming Cliff Racer kind of sucks. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, I think that their toolkit for damage could use a small buff in utility. Growing Swarm is nice. I mean, I think that's a nice change. Obviously, their healing is nice. Their tankiness is obviously really good, and their ulti gen is good. So I think their damage toolkit could use just a couple tweaks, while also, you know, looking at a skill that's providing a lot. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, please provide it in the section below. Hopefully I did my best to, you know, show you Wardens, like, you know, what you're getting with Shock Staff and what you're getting with Clench. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching, guys. Have a nice day.